Have you ever wondered why a person would leave their home country, not for a vacation or work opportunity, but to start a new chapter in life far away from everything they've known? What if I told you that in 2025, thousands of Israeli students quietly made a life-changing decision to leave Israel and travel halfway around the world? To the Philippines? It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? You might even be thinking, why the Philippines? What could possibly draw them so far away? A country that, to many, is a paradise for beach lovers and tourists, but is rarely in the spotlight when it comes to international education or student exchanges. So, why would these students choose to leave the familiarity of their homes in Israel for a place so different, so far, and so unexpected? But here's where the story takes an unexpected twist. What if I told you that this wasn't just a random decision? What if I told you that in 2025, Israel, a country marked by its own deep-seated political tensions and history, began to experience a quiet exodus of its youth? A generation of Israeli students, yearning for something different, something more, decided to take a leap of faith into the unknown. And they found that in the Philippines. Sounds impossible, right? That an entire generation of students would choose to leave behind their homes for a country on the other side of the globe, where the culture, language, and lifestyle are so different from their own. But this quiet migration, though subtle, is one of the most profound and surprising stories of the year. Imagine a group of Israeli students arriving in the Philippines. The media barely covers it. No big celebrations, no fanfare. They quietly blend into the vibrant tapestry of Filipino society, learning, living, and even, in some cases, thriving in a country that is often seen as far removed from the complexities of the Middle East. But what did they find when they arrived? And why were so many students making this choice at once? It wasn't the beaches or the tropical climate that drew them here. It wasn't about escaping the pressures of Israeli life. It was something deeper, something more profound. It was the Philippines' unique ability to offer them an opportunity to build a future that, for some, seemed impossible in their homeland. But what was it about the Philippines that made it the destination of choice for these young Israelis? The answers might surprise you. This story isn't just about travel or a temporary escape. It's about a generational shift in Israel, one where the youth, disillusioned with their own country's political turmoil and societal pressures, began looking outside for answers, and they found something in the Philippines that made them pause, reflect, and stay. Let me introduce you to two of these students, Maya and Yonatan. Maya is 22, an environmental science student who had always dreamed of changing the world. But the more she thought about her future in Israel, the more she realized it wasn't the kind of future she envisioned. Political instability, social divisions, and the constant underlying tension between different groups left her feeling trapped. She couldn't ignore the sense of urgency in her country. The urgency of a society that had been at war for decades. It wasn't just that. It was the fact that Maya had grown up in a place where the future felt uncertain, where conflict and division were as much a part of her life as her studies. She needed something different, something that allowed her to breathe, to grow, and to think beyond the limitations of her environment. Yonatan, on the other hand, was 24 and came from a military family. His life had always been shaped by the demands of national security. He was preparing for his military service when he realized that the path set before him wasn't his path at all. The pressure to conform, the expectation to serve, to follow orders, was suffocating. Yonatan didn't want to spend his life constantly looking over his shoulder. He wanted to escape that cycle, to find peace. Both Maya and Yonatan, along with countless others like them, saw the Philippines as an opportunity to start fresh. The idea of a place where they could breathe, where they could study, work, and grow, free from the political and social chaos of their homeland, seemed like the only way forward. But what drew them here specifically? Was it the Philippines' growing reputation as a center of academic excellence in the region? Or was it something deeper, something almost intangible, that connected these young people to this nation halfway across the world? You might expect that someone like Yonatan, with his military background, would be looking for a place with more stability, more certainty. Yet, it was the Philippines' chaotic beauty, the way its people had endured hardship and rebuilt time and time again, that called to him. It wasn't about finding a perfect country. It was about finding a country that understood resilience, that had gone through its own struggles and emerged with a sense of unity and hope. For Maya, it wasn't just about environmental science or academic growth. It was about being in a place where she could make a real difference. The Philippines, with its emerging environmental initiatives and community-based programs, offered a unique opportunity to put her studies into practice in a way that was meaningful. But there was something else that drew these students in, a common thread that they couldn't explain right away. It wasn't just the academic environment. It wasn't just the welcoming people. It was the chance to feel connected to something greater than themselves, something that went beyond their home country, beyond the conflicts, beyond the narrow confines of what they had known. And that, it seemed, was the magic of the Philippines. So, how did this all start? What triggered the mass arrival of Israeli students to the Philippines in 2025? And what does this say about the changing landscape of global migration, education, and cultural exchange? The truth is, their arrival didn't just mark a shift in their own lives. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Philippines' relationship with the world, one that would redefine how nations viewed this small, often overlooked Southeast Asian country. But the journey these students began would uncover much more than they had ever anticipated, and it would change how they saw not only the Philippines, but also the world itself. When Maya and Yonatan first arrived in the Philippines, they were filled with expectations. Expectations of adventure, of discovery, of breaking free from the constraints of their home country. But nothing could have prepared them for what they would experience in this vibrant archipelago. Maya, a student from Tel Aviv with dreams of making a difference in the world, had expected the Philippines to be nothing more than a peaceful, tropical escape from the pressures she felt back in Israel. She imagined studying in a calm environment, one where the weight of political tension and societal division could fade into the background. She thought she would find an academic haven, one that would offer a respite from the conflict she had known her entire life. Yonatan, who had grown up under the shadow of military service and the constant responsibility of national security, had come to the Philippines with a simple wish: peace. He didn't expect to find answers in the lectures or the classroom. What he sought was something more intangible: the quiet, the chance to be free of the expectations that had shaped his life up until that point. He wanted a life where he could breathe, where he could walk down the street without feeling the pressure of history on his shoulders. Their arrival was quiet. No grand ceremonies, no significant fanfare. They arrived like many other international students, eager to begin their journey but unaware of the profound shift that would happen in their lives. At first, the Philippines seemed exactly as they had imagined, a paradise of lush jungles, pristine beaches, and warm smiles. Yet, the real journey began not in the bustling university halls or the quiet study rooms, but in the small, seemingly inconsequential moments of their everyday lives. Maya's first moment of introspection happened on the third day of her arrival. She was walking along the streets of Cebu City, on her way to a local cafe to meet some fellow students. The air was humid and thick, the streets teeming with life. The noise of motorcycles, the chatter of street vendors, and the sounds of children playing in the distance filled the air. But it wasn't the sounds that caught her attention. It was the sight of an elderly Filipino woman, barefoot, sitting by the side of the road. The woman was selling small bundles of woven palm leaves, an age-old Filipino craft. But Maya noticed something else. She had no chair, no umbrella to shield her from the blistering sun, and yet her face wore a peaceful, serene expression. Maya paused for a moment, watching her, and in that brief moment, something shifted inside her. She thought about her own life in Israel, the constant pressure to perform, to achieve, to prove herself. She thought about the way her people, though resilient, had lived through decades of conflict, often with no respite, no chance to simply be. Here, in the Philippines, people seemed to live differently. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about living, truly living. Maya smiled at the woman and bought a bundle of palm leaves, not because she needed them, but because she felt compelled to. It wasn't a moment of great significance in the grand scheme of things, but it marked the first time Maya felt something unexpected, a connection to a place and a people who, despite their hardships, seemed to find peace in simplicity. For Yonatan, the change was more subtle, yet just as profound. He had been staying with a Filipino host family in the province of Davao, far from the bustling cities. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when his host family invited him to join them for a local festival, a celebration of community and tradition. Yonatan, ever the observer, had expected it to be like any other cultural event, loud, joyful, and fleeting. But when he arrived at the festival grounds, something caught his attention. A group of children, all dressed in traditional Filipino costumes, were performing a dance. But it wasn't the choreography that stood out to Yonatan. It was the way the children danced. Their movements were fluid, graceful, and seemed to tell a story of unity and joy. As the performance continued, Yonatan found himself struck by the simple beauty of it all. Here were children, in the heart of a community that had known hardship, dancing not for applause or attention, but because it was a celebration of who they were, a celebration of life itself. Yonatan had always been taught to serve, to fight for his country, to uphold the values of security and duty. But in that moment, as he watched the children dance, he realized that there was more to life than duty. There was also joy, connection, and the freedom to be simply human. It was a realization that left him speechless as the music played and the children's feet moved in unison. Yonatan felt a strange lump in his throat, an unfamiliar sensation of warmth in his chest. He was moved, not just by the beauty of the dance, but by the realization that there was more to life than the weight of responsibility. It was the first time he began to wonder if peace was something more than just the absence of conflict. Perhaps, he thought, peace was also about finding joy in the small things, in the moments of quiet celebration that didn't require a war to end or a nation to defend. The moments that changed Maya and Yonatan were not dramatic or life-altering events. They were quiet, almost imperceptible moments that began to shape their perceptions of the world and their place within it. For Maya, it was the realization that, here in the Philippines, she could breathe without the constant pressure of conflict. It was the understanding that perhaps her journey to make a difference didn't have to begin with big, sweeping actions. Maybe it began with small gestures, with connecting to the people around her and learning from them. For Yonatan, it was the understanding that peace was not a destination. It was a journey. It was about finding stillness in a world that constantly demands movement. It was about finding balance between duty and joy, responsibility and freedom. And perhaps most of all, it was about discovering that there was a place in the world where he could truly be himself. In these small moments, Maya and Yonatan began to see the Philippines not just as a place to escape to, but as a place that could offer them something far more valuable than they had ever imagined. A place where they could truly start anew, where they could leave behind the burdens of their past and step into a future filled with new possibilities. The first moment of real silence came when Yonatan, after attending the festival, found himself sitting on a quiet beach in Davao, watching the sunset. There, with the soft waves lapping at the shore, he realized that the peace he had been searching for wasn't something he could find through action. It was something he had to embrace through stillness. The world around him was chaotic, but in that moment he understood that true peace was found in accepting the world as it was, without the need to change it all at once. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Yonatan sat in silence, feeling the cool breeze against his skin. And in that silence, he finally understood. Maya, too, would find her own moments of reflection. For now she walked through the streets of Cebu, palm leaves in hand, the weight of her expectations slipping away, replaced by a sense of calm she had never known before. The Philippines, with all its beauty and complexity, had begun to shape them. Not through grand gestures, but through small, meaningful moments that quietly shifted their perspectives. The quiet moments of reflection in the Philippines had become transformative for Maya and Yonatan. But there was one defining event that would crystallize their journey and fully reshape their perspectives, one that neither of them would ever forget. It happened on a warm evening, deep in the heart of the Philippine countryside, where Maya and Yonatan had both traveled to visit a community working on sustainability projects in a remote village in Mindanao. The villagers, with their deep connection to nature, had lived sustainably for generations, farming crops without chemicals and using traditional methods to protect the environment. It was here, amidst this tranquil village, that Maya and Yonatan would experience a moment that would change them forever. It was late in the afternoon when they were invited to a traditional Filipino family gathering, a celebration of harvest. The whole village came together to share food, songs, and stories. As Maya and Yonatan sat in the midst of this community, something about the atmosphere seemed to shift. It wasn't the grand gestures or the lavish displays that caught their attention. It was the simplicity of the gathering, the way the villagers, despite their modest means, poured love into every meal, every conversation, and every song. Maya was sitting at a table when an elderly woman, with weathered hands and a deep laugh, handed her a plate of fresh mangoes. The woman smiled warmly and said in broken English, "For you, dear. You are part of our family now." Maya's eyes welled up with tears. It wasn't just the gesture, it was the meaning behind it. This woman, who had little in terms of wealth, was offering something far greater than material possessions. She was offering connection, a sense of belonging, a part of herself. Maya realized in that very moment that she had been so focused on fixing the world from afar, so intent on changing things in her own country, that she had overlooked the value of small, intimate connections. She had been searching for global solutions, but what she had found here was something far more profound, a community that worked together, cherished each other, and found joy in the simplest of things. And it was this sense of connection that was changing her worldview. For Yonatan, the turning point came as the sun began to set, and he was invited to join the village children in a dance around a fire. The rhythmic beat of the drums echoed in his chest as the children, barefoot and carefree, circled around him, their faces glowing with happiness. Yonatan had always been taught to carry the weight of his country's history on his shoulders, to be responsible for its future. But here, in this moment, he understood something his training had never taught him. Peace wasn't something you could achieve by force or by carrying the burden of history. Peace was found in joy, in community, in shared humanity. And as he danced with the children, his soul felt light for the first time in years. As the night wore on and the village celebration continued, Maya and Yonatan sat side by side, watching the flickering firelight and listening to the laughter around them. Maya, now with a sense of calm, turned to Yonatan and said, "I think I've finally figured it out. It's not about changing everything at once. It's about creating small moments of connection. It's about finding joy in the simplest things and holding on to those moments." Yonatan, still smiling from the dance, nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. I spent so much of my life fighting, trying to fix things. But here, I've realized that peace isn't something you fight for. It's something you create with the people around you." They both sat in silence for a few moments, taking in the magic of the night. In that stillness, they understood the real gift that the Philippines had given them. Not just the opportunity to study or explore, but the chance to reconnect with their own humanity, to remember what it was like to live without the weight of constant conflict, to find hope in small, beautiful moments. When Maya and Yonatan returned to their studies, they carried something inside them that they hadn't expected when they first set foot in the Philippines. Maya, no longer burdened by the weight of trying to change everything, began working on small environmental projects within the community, learning from the local Filipinos who had lived in harmony with nature for generations. She no longer viewed sustainability as something that needed to be imposed from the outside. It was about learning, respecting, and collaborating with the people who had been living it for centuries. Yonatan, who had once felt suffocated by the pressures of military service and societal expectations, now spoke with a new sense of purpose. He began working on community-building projects, helping the locals strengthen their ties, creating initiatives that focused on peace-building and conflict resolution. Yonatan had once seen peace as a distant goal, something to be fought for. But now, he understood that true peace begins with the connections we make in our daily lives, the small acts of kindness that ripple out into the world. As the years went by, Maya and Yonatan became ambassadors of change, small but meaningful change, the kind that begins in the heart. Their stories, though personal, resonated with the Filipino people they met along the way, and it wasn't just about what they brought to the country. It was about what the country had given them. Maya and Yonatan's experiences reflect a deeper truth about the Philippines. It's not just a destination for relaxation or adventure. It's a place that offers profound, life-changing experiences for those who are open to them. The Philippines is a country that teaches resilience, kindness, and the beauty of human connection. In a world that often seems divided, the Philippines stands as a shining example of what can happen when we embrace each other, when we open our hearts to different cultures and ways of life. It's a place that reminds us all that, despite our differences, we are all connected, and that sometimes the smallest moments can leave the biggest mark on our lives. The Philippines, with its warmth, resilience, and unwavering spirit, doesn't just change lives, it transforms them. And in a world that often seems divided, perhaps that's exactly the kind of change we all need.